this session, we're going to be talking about something that has been very important in our lives. You know, we're not very good at calculating where we are, where we need to be, and God is often recalculating our lives in a variety of ways, and we're going to be sharing that with you today.
I think back to a gift somebody gave us years ago. It was such a really great gift, something we'd never had before, and that was a GPS. Always before, whenever we traveled, I would get the maps out. I would be the navigator in the car or the, airports or whatever. And now somebody gave us this GPS, and we're flying into Baltimore, Maryland, and we're going to use our new device to find our hotel accommodations for the night. We get it all set up, we get in our rental car, and away we go to the hotel. The problem is that on our way, it would say, turn right next exit. We would turn right next exit, and it would say, recalculating. So it would turn us all around, then it would say, turn left. We turn left, it says, recalculating. And it seemed like that's all we were hearing. I think we could have gotten to that hotel faster if I would have done the navigation than using that device.
Well, we actually talked about that because I said, you're a much better navigator than this thing's doing for us right now. Yeah. Well, actually, we just need to learn how to use it better and how to follow those prompts better.
That's true. So the purpose of the GPS is to get us from where we are to our destination in the safest and fastest way.
Absolutely. And so we love this analogy because we say that God has a GPS that we call God's positioning system. And really, God is trying to get us from where we are on the shortest and safest route to His kingdom. And sometimes we need some recalculating.
For sure.
So I'm sure you've had the same experience. I'm sure that if you think about it, and as we share our story today, you'll probably be reminded of some recalculations you've had.
So let's look at some biblical examples to start with whose lives had been recalculated by God. Sometimes God has to recalculate because we make intentional decisions to go a different way. Other times God recalculates our lives because in a moment we lose sight of God, we lose hold of God, and we make decisions impulsively, and God still has to recalculate those. And one of those examples would be Moses. He was so connected with God, and for 40 years let God calculate him as he led the children of Israel through the wilderness. And right at the end of the journey, he lost sight of God when the people once again began to murmur and complain. He lost his sight of God. He made an instant decision. He made an impulsive reaction, and God had to recalculate the remainder of Moses' life.
Yeah, and it was a very difficult decision, seeing how faithful Moses was.
Yes.
But it certainly was not an intentional, I'm going to be rebellious against God decision.
That's right.
Not like Jonah. When Jonah made his decision, when God told him where to go, Jonah said, I'm going the other direction.
That's right.
That was a calculated decision.
Intentional detour.
But God didn't give up on Jonah because he made that decision.
That's right. And God doesn't give up on us when we make wrong decisions, either intentionally or unintentionally.
That's right. So we know in both of those situations that for Jonah, even though it was an intentional running away from God, God went through an elaborate process and, swallowed him by a great fish, which is pretty amazing, and took him back to land and gave him an opportunity to start over again.
That's right. I wonder how many times God is going to have to take us back to land, so to speak, right? But we're going to share with you a little bit about our journey, how God has repositioned us and recalculated our lives through the years, even singly, and then how He's led us to where we are today.
Yeah, I'm so thankful that God's promises, and there's one that it's a very favorite of mine, Psalm 32:8. It says, I will instruct you and teach you in the way that you shall go. I will guide you with my eye. It's one of my favorite promises. Mm-hmm. And I did not really understand this promise when I was going through some of the twists and turns that I've shared in some of the messages. But I am so thankful for where God brought me in contact with you and the process that he took me through, because I was getting a recalculation. If he had not recalculated my life when I met you, we would have been like ships passing in the night.
Yeah. Not only did God recalculate your life, but God recalculated my life in order to meet you.
That's right.
Because when I was doing my nursing education, I had a job offer for this hospital that I really was interested in finding for my employer, having to be my employer upon graduation. However, I also had wanted to go to the mission field to be a mission nurse. So, because of that commitment to go to the mission field first, I chose to honor that decision, and it changed the course of my life so that when God brought me back around to the opportunity to get a job offer for the second time at the hospital where you were employed, it was the time to take it.
Yes, and it was, we didn't even realize that how God was instructing, teaching us, and guiding us to bring us together. And it was an amazing timing. And as I said before, that when I saw you, it was an instant attraction. But God had to even recalculate that to give us the right timing.
That's right. So we don't have time to share the whole thing, but just how important it is that God is always working with every one of us to recalculate our steps in order to get us on the path and in the place that he wants us to be. Again, he's looking for our shortest and safest route to our heavenly home. That's where we all want to be, the shortest and safest route to our heavenly home. So God did bring us together, and I did tell you no the first time you asked me out. That's okay. Your male pride handled it quite well.
That I don't know if my male pride handled that quite well, but it helped in the timing of bringing us together.
That's right. So we got married. That's obvious. We got married, right? Because here we stand before you. And we had so carefully planned out our future together. And we encourage all couples to do this. We talked about that earlier in the seminar about planning for success. And we were doing that even before we were married.
That's right.
How we wanted to plan our relationship and how we wanted to plan to buy a home and how we wanted to plan to have a family. So we are now on our plan to success.
This is the beauty of it. When we look at what God is doing in our lives, it's not necessarily that we have a bad plan. It's better to have a plan, okay? A plan for success, a plan that we are calculating what we're doing and not just living impulsively. But it's great that God is willing to adjust those plans to recalculate them, and he did that for us. We were not expecting to have a child in, what was it, 18 months? Or
Yes.
I mean, we had a 5-year plan.
Yes.
That was our plan. We wanted to, get adjusted to each other, get adjusted to life, get a home, that kind of thing.
Yeah, get
That plan
established more
changed.
financially.
That plan changed very quickly.
Yes, I remember waking up one morning feeling so sick. I thought I was getting the flu. I was so nauseated, and I said to him, I am so sick. I don't think I can get out of bed hardly. Anyway, well, it wasn't the flu. I was pregnant. And it was not what I had planned. It was not what we had planned. It was not what I wanted, was to have a child at this time. We'd only been married 9 months, and we had just signed papers to buy our first home the week before. And that was scary because we signed that loan contract on 2 full-time incomes, and now we are going to have a baby in less than 9 months. That was a huge scramble and recalculation for us.
Yeah, because part of our plan was that we were not going to have her continue working full-time after we had a child. So I said, are we going to do that? I mean, that's what we plan to do. Mm-hmm. And you agreed that that's how we wanted to carry on. So it was a big change.
It was a very big change.
Our realtor was the first one to find out that we were pregnant.
Not even our parents knew yet.
Because we wanted to find out if we could get out of the contract. And she said, sorry, you can't get out of the contract.
Well, what was so amazing in this experience is that he was so excited. He was just like a kid with a new toy, knowing that we were going to have a baby. And I was so unhappy and fearful in a way.
And sick.
And sick, all those things in combination. But, God's timing was better than our timing. We didn't understand that then. But now, looking back, we see how God's timing was perfect for us.
Yeah, and it is another scripture that's very meaningful to us. Isaiah 58:11 says, "The Lord shall guide you continually." And he wants to guide us continually, and sometimes we make missteps and he has to recalculate us, but he is so desirous of guiding us, and he was definitely guiding us.
Yes, I really believe that if we would have kept on the course that we had with that 5-year plan, I would have been so into my nursing career that it would have been hard for me to step away and just be a committed mom. But happening so early in our marriage was a huge shift for me. And then I remember one of the things that impressed my mind so amazingly was a small, simple vacation we took when our firstborn was less than 2 years old. I was pregnant with Emily, and we went on a road trip. And as we drove through this country road, we saw a meadow with a beautiful fence between the road and the meadow, and in that meadow was a horse galloping through the field. It was so serene. I said, "Honey, stop the car, stop the car." And he stopped the car. We pulled off the side of the road. He backed up so we could see this. And I got Allison out of the car, and I took her over to the fence. And the three of us stood there just watching this horse gallop through the field. It was just beautiful. And what I saw in that little girl's expression went deep in my heart. It was an expression that in her entire life I had never seen before. And God used that moment as a marker in my mind of a new direction he was about to launch us on.
Yeah, because part of our original plan was that we would live in a country setting rather than in the suburban city setting. Mm-hmm. And we kind of had gotten into life, and we kind of lost that kind of rekindled that vision for us.
Yes.
So, fast forwarding, we really felt convicted that we needed a change of our surroundings. And so we began praying, claiming the promises again, that the Lord would instruct us and teach us, that he would guide us continually. And we ended up going out to Montana.
Yes, we went out there really because God had brought us to another point in our lives where we had to make some major decisions and maybe major turns in how we were living our lives at that time. And it became quite apparent to us that we needed to be more involved in the education of our own children. And we decided to homeschool our children. Well, at that time in the U.S.,
it was illegal.
It was illegal for anyone to homeschool unless you had a teaching degree. I had a bachelor's in nursing. I wasn't a teacher, I was a nurse. And so the Northwest states gave us an opportunity to look for a place in the country where we could educate our own children. And that's why we were heading out there to Montana.
Yeah, so that is an amazing story of how God led in that whole situation. And we want to just share a piece of this. We had exhausted the possibilities. There were 4 states that it was Washington, Montana, Oregon, and Idaho. Mm-hmm. 4 states that you could actually teach your children. We call it homeschool now. You could teach your children without having a teaching certificate. So we basically exhausted places to go. And so we were just praying one morning, and we said, "Lord, you've promised that you would instruct us and teach us in the way that we should go. You've promised that you would guide us if we surrender our lives to you." And so we ended up driving into this home, just up in the mountains, and met this couple there. And they were so kind, so hospitable. And they said, "Well, our place really isn't for sale, but are you in the area?" And we had been camping in the area.
Yes, we had. In fact, one of the reasons we were actually in that area is because my husband had gotten a job offer, and we didn't know if that's really where God wanted us. We thought, well, if God gives us a job offer, God also has to provide us a place to live, because those things have to go together. We want to live where you work. And so this was one of the reasons why we were combing that area to see if we could find somewhere to live. And we had been there almost a week and exhausted almost every possibility.
Everything that the realtors had available.
That's right.
So, Anyway, yes, we were camping in the area, and we met this couple. Their house was not for sale, but we struck up a conversation, and they said, so where are you? And we said, well, we're camping in this little campground just down below, a couple miles away. And they said, look, why don't you just give us some time to think about some things? And we did. And they came and visited us the next morning where we were camping.
Yes. Well, what was so amazing about that is it wasn't that we wanted to necessarily buy their home.
That's right.
But they had 40 acres, and part of that acreage was separated from the main part on another side of the road. And my husband, you remember that day you felt impressed to say, well, what if, would you consider selling this little piece?
This little piece down here.
So here we are in our pickup truck with a little cap on the back. Now we have 3 children. Our oldest is 5, our second is 3, and we have a newborn. And we're camping out in the back of a pickup, and we get the knock on the door that are on the side of the truck, and these people called us by name and said, we'd like to talk to you. We just wanted to see if you'd be open to come up tomorrow morning, and we will talk to you about your interest in buying that property, and we'll let you know our decision tomorrow morning.
So we went up there the next morning, and we had breakfast with them. They said, well, we'll fix you a pancake breakfast, which that was great for me. Children were little. We didn't know how they were going to do on that.
That was scary for me, actually.
It's scary for her as a mom. Why would that be scary for a mom?
Well, because as a mother, and you have 3 little ones, well, of course, Josiah wouldn't matter because he's an infant, but 2 other ones who can be quite picky at times with what they like and don't like, fussy at the table. I'm thinking, oh, we don't even know these people, and they're inviting us into their home to have breakfast. And I started thinking of all the things that my children could say or do or act that might be kind of not a good situation.
So an interesting thing happened as we were there together with them, and we're sharing together, and she's making, the lady is making us pancakes. And the more pancakes she made, now I love pancakes, our kids, the 2, Allison and Emily, were eating pancakes like there was no meal for the rest of their lives. They were just eating them, and you were starting to get a little bit embarrassed.
I was. I mean, first, of course, I was concerned they weren't going to like what we were going to have. And I did let them know that, hey, we're a vegetarian family here, because I knew I could tell by the smell in the home that they were a meat-eating family. And so we didn't need the bacon that usually goes along with the pancakes. But nonetheless, they're eating, and I'm thinking, this is embarrassing. This lady keeps getting up and making more pancakes. Allison, at 5 years old, she was on her 5th pancakes, and they were like this big. I couldn't believe, where is she putting all this food? She doesn't ever eat like that at home. These people are going to think we are starving our kids.
So it was very interesting. We had a nice meal together, even though that was a little bit awkward. They were eating so much. But the beauty of it is that as the story develops, this couple offered to sell us that little piece of property, a little over 6 acres of property there. They offered to sell that to us. We were so excited. Not only did they offer to sell it to us, but they offered to sell it to us. They didn't even know how much money we had. And they told us wasn't much. They told us exactly what we would have to pay for it. And when they gave us the price, it was exactly the amount of money that we had the ability to pay. That was incredible.
That's when we really knew that God was leading us in this step. I mean, because other properties we looked at were not affordable, and we only had a certain amount of funds to put into raw land.
Yes, and so what was really amazing, I wish we could tell you the whole story, but what was really beautiful is that after we purchased the land, we started building, and the man there of the house helped build our log home. And as we were building, about 6 months after we were there and we were in the building process, the lady said to us one evening as we were sitting in their home, she said, "Do you want to know why we sold you this property?" And we said, "Yeah." She said, "I had a dream 10 years ago. And in my dream, I saw your family." Now, how long had we been married?
6.5 years.
6.5 years. She had a dream 10 years before this She said, I saw your family come to our house and have a pancake breakfast with us. There were no faces, but there were 5 of you, and the littlest was an infant. And
Can I just back up and say one thing?
Go ahead.
She said, in the dream, before she saw us at her table, she remembered that some young couple had come wanting to buy that piece of land. And other people, including relatives, had wanted to buy that piece of land. And they kept saying, no, no, no. So that's why that pancake breakfast was so impactful.
Yeah, so in that dream that she had dreamed that the people, which ended up being us, the little children, that the children had not been the fussy, normal American family. They had eaten her pancakes. They had eaten them with relish. They had been thankful and expressed their appreciation, and that's how she knew that we were the family.
And to us, that was truly amazing because, like I said earlier, it could have been any other time in our home and the children at the table, and there would have been some fussing and I don't like this or I don't want that. But God had already started to work in our hearts that we needed to really train our children to be happy, to be content, and to really follow us as parents and to learn how to be obedient as little children. We had just started that process when we first decided that we wanted to move the country, and it took us 10 months. So from the decision after our son was born, before our son was born, to move our family to a rural setting till we actually got there, more than 10 months had passed. And during that time, we had been working to bring the principles of God's Word into application with our children, which prepared us for that encounter that day, which we had no idea was part of someone else's dream before we ever met each other.
Yeah, so we hadn't even been together when she had this dream. The other thing that was so amazing is these people had no profession of Christianity at all. And so God is not limited by anything.
That's right.
When we're seeking to do His will. So it was an amazing way that God opened it up. And it's another of our favorite texts. Isaiah 42:16 says, I will bring the blind by a way they knew not. I will lead them in paths that they have not known. I will make the darkness light before them and the crooked way straight. This will I do unto them and not forsake them, saith the Lord. What a promise. God was fulfilling that promise. We had no idea how that was going to happen.
Yeah. And not that it was easy, that huge transition in life, that big move, moving away from family and friends to a very isolated part of Montana. That was a big step for us, especially with the young family. But because of how God led in recalculating our lives, we moved there without a question of a doubt that He was guiding us. So when we hit the hard times and things went wrong there, we knew God had brought us there. And we just want to encourage you, sometimes we sense God leading, we see His leadings, we see His providence happen, and we are so thankful. But those are markers that when we continue the journey ahead, we can know He still is going ahead of us, even though we hit some rough spots and some challenges along the way.
That's right. So we just really want to encourage you that some of the things that we go through, even the trials and difficulties we go through, some because, like Moses, we just let go. We don't really mean to be rebellious. But sometimes let's be honest, it's like Jonah. We just don't want to do what we need to do. Wherever we find ourselves in that situation, we want to encourage you. God is not done with you. He is even now in the process of looking at how He can arrange and help through circumstances to recalculate our direction back to the shortest way to the kingdom of heaven.
That's right. One of the experiences I think along the way, and we have so many through the many years we've been married, but we were over here in Europe for a number of, I think it was probably about 5 or 6 weeks, going to different countries sharing. And as a family, we've always traveled together. When in the early years of ministry, when we were raising our family, our children were very much a part of the ministry and traveled with us. And we had been in different European countries, and now we were going into England, under the Channel, and into the London Underground. it was so weird because we had been spending weeks and saying things like this: do you speak English? Do you speak English? Because everywhere we went, nobody hardly spoke English. And if we don't have a guide or interpreter with us, it was a little bit challenging. So this was kind of inbred in our minds, in our children's minds, and we're going into the London Underground to get our connecting train to the next place we're supposed to go. And this is more for business travel, not long-term travels. Remember that, honey?
Yes, I remember well. So we got separated.
We did get separated.
We got separated. The doors opened. We got in, and some of our children didn't make it. Actually, the two girls.
The two girls. The door shut.
There was literally no spot. We were just jammed, the door closed, and they were on the outside.
And people on the outside and the inside saw what was happening, and I think they were fearful for us too. And the train is off. And our girls turned to somebody and said, "Do you speak English?" And it was kind of cute because the people chuckled. Of course, we speak English. You're in England. Anyway, they got somebody from the rail service to help them, and they sent a message to the people, the conductor on the train we were on, and told us to get off at the next stop and that they would be put on the next train. Well, we actually waited several trains before they got off. But anyway, those was one of those recalculating moments for us that was a little bit scary, really, for me as a mom, thinking that here we are in a foreign country and we have two children that are like 12 and 10, and they aren't even with us. They're lost somewhere in the London Underground.
Yeah, it was not a comfortable experience.
No.
But it was a trusting experience.
And that's what we have here. The Lord will guide us and He will give us that direction.
Yeah, so I want you to share with them the experience that you had looking for Allison's wedding dress.
Okay, so we're going to fast
forward.
Fast forward again. We're going to jump another decade here in time. So one of the things that I really enjoyed doing with our daughters as they were planning on their marriages was to help and go wedding dress shopping. I think that's kind of every mom's dream with their daughter. So we decided we were going to take a trip to Salt Lake City because at least from where we were, it would give us an opportunity to find a modest wedding dress. And we had rented a car, Allison and I. We'd been to several bridal shops, and we just had come out of one that we found the dress that was perfect for her and for her day. And we were so excited. In fact, it didn't even need to be altered at all. We could actually put it in the car and take it with us. And we were just so excited. And as we came out of the parking lot into the street, a small street, waiting to get on the big intersection there where cars are going like 50 miles an hour, 2 lanes one way, 2 lanes the other. As we are there at that intersection, I'm waiting for the light to turn green. I got on my cell phone and I said to my husband, "We found the dress. We have it with us. We are so excited." And he were all excited too, remember that?
Absolutely.
And I said, "I got to get off the phone because I need to be ready to drive out into the traffic." And I shut the phone or turned the phone off and laid it in my lap. Now, that was kind of an interesting place to put the phone because when I lay the phone in my lap when I'm driving, I forget it's there. And when I get out, the phone falls off my lap and onto the pavement. And as I was sitting at that light and waiting for the light to turn green, I had the thought, put your phone away. And you know, sometimes God gives us these little thoughts and we don't even know it's God calling to our hearts. How do we know if that's God calling to our hearts? Well, first of all, God is a God of order. So that call was for me to do something that was outside of my humanity wanting to be quick, right? And just be thorough in what I was doing. So I stopped, I picked up the phone, and just as I was getting ready to put it in my purse, which is what the thought I had to put it in my purse, the light turned green. But because I'm in the process of putting it in my purse, I did not get out into the intersection immediately because I was going to turn left into that intersection with cars coming this way that should have been stopped. So that little pause to follow that instruction, to put my phone away in my purse, led me into that intersection a little after the light turned green. And then I had to stop. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw this huge SUV coming directly towards us. I was in a little tiny Kia rental. And that SUV did not see the red light. And I swerved and it swerved. And nearly, we would have been killed that day, I have no doubt, if I had not chosen to follow that prompting, to put that phone away and have that hesitation in time. We were so close to being hit broadside by that SUV at that speed. It would have been a horrific accident.
Yeah, so I want to pause for a moment because you can imagine the impact that this had on me sitting at home and just having gotten off of the phone with the good news with my wife, and now she is going through this experience, which I'm not even aware is happening. Mm-hmm. When I find out that this is happening, I want you to think for a moment as you hear this, how that simple following of that prompting. You know, John 10:27 says, my sheep hear my voice. They know my voice and they do not follow the voice of a stranger. That would have been the difference between either a horrendous death, mm-hmm. but it would have changed that beautiful moment into something devastating.
That's right.
Just that choice that she made to follow that prompting, to put her phone away, gave her 2 seconds?
Probably.
Maybe 2 seconds of time, which did not put her in the middle of the intersection. It put her where that vehicle could avoid her without a collision.
Yeah. So I share this example, or we share this example, because sometimes God recalculates our lives in big ways, and we've given you some of those at the beginning. Sometimes God recalculates our lives in small ways, and to me,
That could have big consequences.
They could have big, exactly. But this was a small thing. Just put your phone away. Don't leave it in your lap because it's probably going to fall on the ground and, get smashed. By doing that, it seemed like such an insignificant decision, but by following that thought and following that thought through to completion, I believe spared our lives, myself and my daughter,
right.
and not only kept our family intact, but now our daughter's married and she has a family, so we have an extended family because of that decision. And that is just an amazing thought about God's goodness.
It is an amazing thought, and part of the reason that we emphasize this is because we don't often take as seriously as we should those little impressions that the Lord gives to us. And you don't have to be a deep Bible student. You don't have to be in deep prayer to know that the love of God calls to us, whether we're in a conversation in our marriage relationship and we're the tone of voice is changing, or we're starting to get upset. We know that conscience, the speaking of the Holy Spirit through our conscience calls to us and helps us or calls to us not to do it. And if we would respond more often and more fully to those things, what a difference it would make in our lives.
That's right. I love this verse in Philippians chapter 1 and verse 6. I think this is my favorite Bible verse.
Yes.
Being confident of this very thing, that He, God, who has started this work in us, is going to complete it before the day that Jesus comes again. What a beautiful promise that is, that all of us can take hold of. We've all made detours. We've all tried to take shortcuts. We've all been deliberate in doing our own thing and going our own way. But if we hold on to this promise and we reconnect with God, He has promised that He will get us to our final destination.